The alien ships appeared in Earth's orbit without warning. 12 massive vessels, each one larger than any human-made station, hung in space like silent judges. Their hulls gleamed with metals that humans had never seen before. On every screen across Earth, the same message played in perfect English. The Galactic Council requests an immediate meeting with Earth's leaders. Captain Park stood on the bridge of humanity's sword, Earth's most powerful warship. He was 42 years old, with gray starting to show at his temples. His uniform was crisp and clean, but his eyes showed the tiredness of someone who had been on alert for 3 days straight. Ever since the Council ships arrived, nobody in Earth's defense force had slept much. "Captain, they're requesting permission to dock at Station Unity," his communications officer said. Nodded slowly. "Grant them permission, but keep all weapons hot. Tell Admiral we have visual confirmation." On Earth's surface in the capital city of New Geneva, Admiral watched the same ships through her office window. She was 50 years old, a veteran of the border wars that had shaped humanity's expansion into space. Her black hair was pulled back tight, and her expression showed nothing. But inside, her mind was racing through possibilities. "They want to talk," her aide said nervously. "They want to control us," replied quietly. "There's a difference." The council delegation arrived with ceremony and pride. Their leader was Ambassador, a tall being with blue skin and 4 arms. She wore robes that seemed to shift colors in the light. Behind her came representatives from a dozen different alien species, each more strange than the last. They met in Station Unity's main conference room. The room had been built for meetings between Earth's nations, but now it hosted something much bigger. On one side sat the humans, President Lee, Admiral and Doctor, humanity's chief strategist. On the other side sat the council members, arranged in a semicircle like a court. President Lee was only 38, the youngest person ever elected to lead Earth's united government. She had dark eyes that missed nothing and a voice that could be soft or hard as steel. Right now, she kept her face calm and welcoming. "Welcome to Earth space," said in flawless galactic common, the language used by the Council. "We are honored by your visit." Ambassador's face showed something that might have been a smile. "President Lee, we come with an offer of great importance. The Galactic Council has watched humanity's expansion with interest. You have grown faster than we expected." "We are an ambitious species," replied carefully. "Indeed, too ambitious perhaps." Activated a holographic display. It showed a map of space with human colonies marked in red. In the past century, humanity has established settlements in 23 star systems. 7 of these are in zones that the Council designated as protected areas over 10,000 years ago. Doctor leaned forward. He was a thin man in his 50s, with glasses he didn't really need but wore out of habit. His mind was possibly the sharpest in human space. "Protected for what purpose?" he asked. "For the preservation of developing species, for ecological study, for countless reasons that the Council has deemed important," said. Her tone suggested that questioning these reasons was inappropriate. "Humanity has violated these protections. You have also expanded your military presence in ways that concern many Council members." Admiral spoke for the first time. "We have defended our colonies from pirates and hostile forces, nothing more." "Your definition of defense is aggressive by galactic standards," another council member said. This one looked like a giant insect with crystals growing from its back. "You build warships, not cargo vessels. You establish military bases, not research stations." Raised one of her 4 hands. "However, the Council is willing to offer humanity a path forward. We come with an offer of peace and membership." She activated another display. This one showed a document written in multiple languages. "If Earth agrees to these terms, you will become junior members of the Galactic Council. You will receive technology, trade rights, and protection under Council law." read through the terms on her personal display. Her face remained neutral, but Doctor saw her jaw tighten slightly. That was never a good sign. "Let me understand these terms correctly," said after a long moment. "Humanity must cease all expansion beyond our current 23 systems. We must dismantle our military installations in the outer reaches. We must submit to Council inspections and oversight. We must accept Council arbitration in all disputes with other species. And we must maintain this status for 500 years before being considered for full membership." "That is correct," said. "These terms are generous by Council standards. Many species wait much longer for membership." "And if we refuse?" Admiral asked. The room became very quiet. The expression hardened. "Then humanity continues as an unrecognized power. You will receive no Council protection, no trade agreements, no access to Council space or technology, and the Council will take appropriate action to enforce our laws regarding the protected zones you currently occupy." "Appropriate action," Doctor repeated softly. "That means military action." "It means whatever is necessary to maintain galactic peace," said firmly. The meeting ended without agreement. The Council delegation returned to their ships, and humanity's leaders gathered in a secure room deep in station unity. "It's not peace they're offering," said, removing his glasses to rub his tired eyes. "It's surrender. They want us to stop growing, stop building, and stop being a threat to their established order." 500 years, added. "In that time they could shape our entire civilization. They could prevent us from ever becoming their equals." Stood at the window looking at Earth below. The blue planet seemed so peaceful from here, but she knew that humanity's fighting spirit ran deep. They had survived wars, plagues, near-extinction events, and the harsh reality of space. They had not come this far to kneel before anyone. "Prepare a response," she told her communication staff. "I want every human colony, every ship, every station to hear this, and make sure the Council receives it too." 2 hours later, President Lee's face appeared on every screen in human space. She also transmitted her message to all Council worlds, making sure the galaxy would hear Earth's answer. "People of Earth and honored members of the Galactic Council," she began. Her voice was clear and strong. "We have reviewed the Council's generous offer of peace and membership. We have considered their terms carefully. After much thought, I must deliver our answer." She paused, and in that pause, history held its breath. "Humanity rejects these terms. We did not crawl out of our cradle, survive the darkness between stars, and build homes on distant worlds only to surrender our freedom. We will not dismantle our defenses. We will not stop our growth. We will not kneel before those who would cage us with pretty words and hidden chains." On the Council ships, Ambassador watched with growing anger. "We seek peace," continued, "but peace between equals, not between master and servant. If the Council cannot accept this, then we will forge our own path among the stars. Humanity will not be threatened into submission. We are ready for whatever comes next." The transmission ended. Across human space, people cheered. On the Council ships, the ambassadors sat in stunned silence. Finally spoke, her voice cold with fury. "They will regret this arrogance. Set course for the Council. Inform the Military Fleet Council. Humanity has chosen war, though they do not yet know it." The Council ships departed Earth's orbit. They left behind a message. Humanity had 30 days to reconsider. After that, consequences would begin. Those 30 days passed quickly. Humanity did not reconsider. Instead, they prepared for what was coming. And in the dark between stars, the Galactic Council assembled their punishment fleet. The 30 days ended with no word from Earth. The silence made Ambassador angrier than any insult could have. In her mind, humanity's continued defiance was proof that they needed to be taught a lesson. The Council agreed. The punishment fleet gathered at Rally Point Sigma, a massive station at the edge of Council space. 12,000 warships from 24 different species created a wall of metal and power that stretched across space. Some ships were as large as cities. Others were small and fast, built for hunting. Together, they represented the largest military force the Council had assembled in over 3,000 years. Commander Han stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dawn. He was one of the Council's founding species. His people had blue-gray skin and eyes that could see in spectrums humans couldn't imagine. He had commanded fleets for 60 years, and never once had he lost a battle. "This is excessive," his second officer said quietly. 12,000 ships against a single species that has barely left their home system. Han smiled. "It is not excessive. It is necessary. The Council must show overwhelming force so that no other young species gets similar ideas. Humanity will surrender the moment they see our fleet. Mark my words, we will not fire a single shot." The fleet moved through jump space, covering light years in hours. Their target was Station, humanity's furthest military outpost. It sat at the edge of human space, a fortress built on a converted asteroid. Intelligence reports said it held maybe 300 human defenders and had perhaps 50 defensive ships. When the Council fleet arrived in the system, they spread out in perfect formation. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The humans would look at their sensors and see an endless wall of ships. They would understand that resistance was impossible. Colonel Bay watched those same sensors from her command center inside Station. She was 36 years old, with short black hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. She had fought pirates, corporate raiders, and hostile aliens before, but she had never seen anything like this. "Ma'am, they're hailing us," her communications officer said. His voice shook slightly. "Put them through," said calmly. Commander Han's face appeared on the main screen. He looked almost bored. "Human Commander, I am Commander Han of the Galactic Council Fleet. You are ordered to power down all weapons, evacuate your station, and prepare to be taken into custody. You have 1 hour to comply." Looked at the massive fleet arrayed against her small station. She looked at her crew, who were all watching her with a mixture of fear and determination. Then she looked back at the screen. "Commander Han, I am Colonel Bay of Earth Defense Forces. You have entered human territory without permission. You have 1 hour to leave our space. After that, we will consider you hostile and act accordingly." For a moment Han just stared at her. Then he laughed. It was not a kind laugh. "You cannot be serious. You have 300 defenders and perhaps 50 ships. I have 12,000 warships. Do you understand mathematics?" "I understand them perfectly," replied. "Do you understand commitment?" She cut the transmission. Around her, the crew moved to their battle stations without being ordered. They all knew what was coming. They had all volunteered for this duty knowing it might be their last assignment. "Release the birds," said quietly. The hour passed. Commander Han gave the order to attack. He expected the humans to surrender as soon as the first shots were fired. Instead, something strange happened. The space around Station suddenly lit up with new contacts. Weapons platforms that had been hidden in stealth mode activated all at once. Human ships that had been hiding behind asteroids and moons revealed themselves. Mines that had been floating dormant in the system armed and moved toward the Council fleet. "This is a trap," Han's tactical officer shouted. "Impossible," Han replied. "We have 12,000 ships. Even if they plan this, they cannot possibly." His words were cut off as the first wave of human weapons struck. These were not normal missiles or energy beams. The humans had spent decades studying Council technology through trade, espionage, and careful observation. Doctor and his team had designed weapons specifically to counter Council defenses. The missiles moved in ways Council sensors couldn't track properly. They ignored shields that should have stopped them. When they hit, they caused chain reactions that tore through multiple ships at once. The energy weapons operated on frequencies that Council armor wasn't designed to handle. The Council fleet tried to respond, but they were not prepared for enemies who understood their weaknesses. More importantly, they were not prepared for enemies who were willing to sacrifice everything to hurt them. A wing of human fighters, led by a pilot named O, dove straight into the center of the Council formation. They flew in patterns that made no tactical sense by Council standards. They took insane risks, using asteroids and debris as cover, coming from angles that should have been impossible. They fight like they're already dead, one Council captain reported in shock. Han watched his fleet being torn apart and couldn't understand what he was seeing. The humans were losing too. Station's outer hull was breaking under sustained fire. Human ships were exploding in brilliant flashes. The defensive platforms were being destroyed one by one, but the humans didn't stop. They didn't surrender. They just kept fighting. Inside Station, Colonel Bay coordinated the defense with calm precision. She knew they were losing. She had always known they would lose. That was never the point. Reactor 3 is critical, her engineer reported. How long until it goes? Asked. 10 minutes, maybe less. Nodded. Time to leave then. Give the evacuation order. All personnel to the escape pods. Transmit the final data burst to Earth Command. Colonel, you need to evacuate too, her second officer said. I will. I just need to make sure everyone else gets out first. The battle raged for 6 brutal hours. When it finally ended, Station was a broken wreck. Of the 300 defenders, only 60 escaped in the evacuation pods. The human fleet was destroyed to the last ship. But the Council fleet had been savaged. 3,000 ships were gone, destroyed or so damaged they had to be scuttled. Thousands more had taken damage, and the psychological impact was even worse. The mighty Galactic Council, who had not lost a battle had been bloodied by a species they considered primitive. Commander Han sat in his damaged flagship and tried to make sense of it. His fleet had won. Station was destroyed, but it felt like defeat. He had started with 12,000 ships. He was limping home with barely 9,000, and many of those would never fight again. Send a message to Council Command, he said quietly. Tell them the humans are not what we thought. They don't fight to win. They fight to make victory cost too much. Back on Earth, Admiral watched the battle footage that Colonel Bay's team had transmitted before the station fell. The data was complete, showing every Council tactic, every weakness, every mistake. It was exactly what Earth Command needed. Survived, an aide reported. Her pod was picked up by a rescue ship. Allowed herself a small smile. Good. We're going to need every veteran we have. Get me President Lee, and get me Doctor. The Council just showed us their hand. Now we show them ours. Across Council space, news of the battle spread. 3,000 ships lost. Thousands of Council soldiers dead, all to take a single human station. The footage played on every world, and for the first time in galactic history, species began to question whether the Council was truly invincible. On the Council, Ambassador watched the same footage with growing dread. She had wanted to teach humanity a lesson. Instead, humanity had taught the galaxy something else, that the Council could bleed. Prepare for full mobilization, she ordered. No more half measures. We will crush them completely or die trying. But in the back of her mind, a small voice whispered a question she didn't want to acknowledge. What if even that isn't enough? On Earth, President Lee addressed her people again. Her face was grave, but her voice was strong. Station has fallen. 60 brave souls escaped. 240 gave their lives to show the Council that we will not surrender. Every human who died today made the Council pay in blood for every meter of our space. They wanted to frighten us into submission. Instead, they have shown the galaxy that humans do not frighten easily. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the weight of history. The Council thinks this is over. They think they have won. They are wrong. This is only the beginning. We will show them what humanity does when threatened. We will show them what happens when you push us too far. Across human space, recruitment centers were flooded with volunteers. The Council had wanted to scare humanity into peace. Instead, they had started a war they would come to regret. The news from stations spread across human space like fire. The Galactic Council had expected their show of force to break humanity's spirit. Instead, it had the opposite effect. Within days of the battle, recruitment centers on every human world were overwhelmed with volunteers. Was one of them. He had been a structural engineer on New Sol, a colony world in the outer reaches. He was 31 years old, married with a daughter who had just turned 5. He had a good life, a safe life. But when he saw the footage of Station's last stand, something changed inside him. "You don't have to do this," his wife said, tears running down her face. Held her hands. "Yes, I do. They're coming for all of us. If I don't stand now, who will be there to protect you and our daughter?" Stories like this were playing out across human civilization. The Council had thought that one overwhelming victory would teach humanity their place. Instead, it had awakened something dangerous in the human spirit. It had made the fight personal. In the Pentagon complex on Earth, Admiral stood before a holographic display showing the entire theater of war. She had been in the military for 30 years, but this was unlike anything she had faced before. This wasn't a border skirmish or a colonial dispute. This was total war against an enemy that controlled most of the galaxy. "Show me the fleet status," she ordered. The display changed to show human military assets. On paper, it looked hopeless. Humanity had 3,000 combat-ready warships. The Council had millions. Even after their losses the Council still outnumbered humans hundreds to 1. But Doctor smiled as he studied the display. The thin scientist had been working for 3 days straight, running on coffee and determination. "Numbers don't tell the whole story, Admiral." "Explain," said. Adjusted his glasses and pulled up a new set of data. The Council fights like they've always fought. They rely on overwhelming numbers and superior technology. They expect enemies to meet them in open battle where their advantages are strongest, but we won't do that. He highlighted several Council supply lines and manufacturing centers. They have millions of ships, but those ships need fuel, ammunition, and repairs. They have a logistics network that spans thousands of light years, and we've spent 80 years mapping every single node in that network. Admiral's eyes narrowed. "You want to go after their supply lines?" "More than that," said, his excitement building. "We make them afraid to move. We hit them where they're weak when they're weak. We never fight on their terms. Every time they concentrate their forces to attack us, we attack somewhere else. We make victory so expensive that their member species start questioning whether it's worth it." "Guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale," said thoughtfully. "Exactly. They have more ships, but we have better intelligence and we're faster. Most importantly, we have motivation. Every human knows what's at stake. How many Council species can say the same?" The strategy went into effect immediately. Human fleets, organized into small, fast-moving strike groups, began hitting Council targets throughout the region. They didn't try to conquer territory. They just made the Council pay for every system they controlled. Captain Park led one of these strike groups. His small fleet of 15 ships had been operating behind Council lines for 3 weeks. They had hit 2 supply convoys, destroyed a repair station, and mined a major hyperspace lane. The Council had sent 3 hunting groups to find them and had evaded them all. "Captain, we found the target," his tactical officer reported. On the screen appeared a Council shipyard, one of the facilities that produced their warships. It was deep in Council space, 3 sectors from the nearest human world. The Council had never imagined it could be threatened. "How many defenders?" asked. 50 ships, mostly light cruisers. The yard itself has fixed defenses but nothing we can't handle." Studied the layout. It was a risk. If they were trapped here, far from friendly space, they would all die. but the Yard produced 20 warships every month. Destroying it would hurt the Council more than winning a dozen pitched battles. All ships prepare for attack. We go in fast, hit hard, and get out before reinforcements arrive. Remember, we're not here to win glory. We're here to make them hurt. The attack lasted 90 minutes. Ships came out of hyperspace already firing, their targeting data prepared days in advance. The defending ships were caught off guard, scrambling to respond. By the time they organized a defense, 3 of them were already destroyed. The shipyard's defenses were strong but predictable. Human weapons, designed specifically to counter Council technology, tore through them systematically. When the humans finally retreated, the shipyard was a burning wreck. It would take years to rebuild. His fleet jumped to safety with minimal losses. As they fled, he transmitted a simple message to the Council forces. Nowhere is safe. Everywhere hurts. Stop while you can. Similar attacks were happening throughout Council space. A mining facility destroyed here. A communications relay taken out there. Supply convoys burning in deep space. The Council's vast empire was being cut by 1,000 small wounds, and they couldn't stop the bleeding. But the Council wasn't defenseless. They adapted, sending larger hunting fleets to find the human raiders. And when they found human forces, they showed no mercy. The colony world of Nu learned this the hard way. When Council ships appeared in orbit, the colonists had barely 2 hours of warning. Governor Sora, a former military officer who had retired to civilian life, immediately organized the defense. "We can't stop them," her deputy said, looking at the sensor readings. The Council had sent 200 warships to pacify Nu. "We don't need to stop them," Sora replied calmly. "We need to make them wish they had never come." Nu had 40,000 colonists. Most were civilians, but many had military training. In the 2 hours before the invasion began, Sora organized them into resistance cells. She distributed weapons that had been hidden for exactly this scenario. She prepared traps throughout the colony's main city. When the Council troops landed, they expected a quick occupation. Instead, they walked into a nightmare. The humans didn't meet them in open battle. They hit and ran, using their knowledge of the colony's layout to deadly effect. Every street corner could hide a sniper. Every building might be rigged to explode. The Council had overwhelming force, but force meant nothing when you couldn't find the enemy. Days stretched into weeks. The Council troops grew paranoid, shooting at shadows. Their supplies ran low. Reinforcements had to be diverted from other operations. Governor Sora broadcast a message to the Council forces every day. "Leave our world. You are not welcome here. Every day you stay, more of you die. How many of your people are we worth?" The siege of Nu became famous throughout the galaxy. One small colony was tying down a Council force that should have been unstoppable. Other human colonies took note and prepared similar defenses. The Council's strategy of punishing human worlds one by one was becoming too expensive. On the Council, frustration was turning to fear. Ambassador faced angry representatives from a dozen species. They had supported the war thinking it would be quick and easy. Now their ships were burning, their soldiers were dying, and there was no end in sight. "We need more forces," argued. "If we commit fully, we can crush them." "How many more ships will we lose?" a representative from the collective asked. "We sent 500 to hunt human raiders last month. 400 came back. This is not acceptable." "They are a young species with primitive technology," insisted. "They cannot win." "They don't need to win," another representative replied. "They just need to make us lose, and they're doing exactly that." The debate raged, but in the end, the Council voted to escalate. They would mobilize 1,000,000 warships, the largest fleet in galactic history. They would sweep through human space and end this rebellion once and for all. But as the massive fleet began to gather, something unexpected happened. 3 Council member species quietly announced they were withdrawing their ships. They cited budget concerns and domestic issues, but everyone knew the truth. They didn't want to be part of a war that was bleeding the council dry. On Earth, Doctor presented his latest intelligence reports to President Lee and Admiral. The council is mobilizing everything they have. They're planning one final, overwhelming push. "Can we stop them?" asked. "In open battle, no," admitted. "But we don't need to beat them in open battle. We just need to survive long enough for their alliance to crack. 3 species have already pulled out. Others are wavering. The longer this war goes, the more the Council loses credibility." Admiral studied the projected path of the Council's massive fleet. They were heading for the Threshold, the strategic gateway system between Council and human space. If the Council controlled the Threshold, they could strike at Earth itself. "Then that's where we make our stand," said quietly. "At the Threshold. We gather every ship we have and we hold that line, not because we can win, but because we must." Across human space, the call went out. Every warship, every fighter, every captain and crew who could fly was ordered to the Threshold. It would be the largest battle in human history, a last stand against impossible odds. Pilot O, who had survived the disaster at Station and become humanity's most decorated combat ace, received her orders with a grim smile. She had flown 70 combat missions and shot down over 100 Council fighters. She knew the odds at the Threshold would be terrible. "Good," she told her squadron. "Let's show them what terrible looks like." The pieces were moving into place. The Council's million-ship fleet was gathering. Humanity's defenders were preparing for the battle of their lives. And somewhere in the dark between stars, the future of human civilization hung in the balance. The Threshold system was nothing special to look at. It had no planets, just a few asteroids and a lot of empty space. But it sat at the convergence of 3 major hyperspace lanes, making it the gateway between Council space and human territory. Whoever controlled the Threshold controlled access to Earth and its colonies. Admiral arrived at the Threshold 3 weeks before the Council fleet was expected. She brought with her every warship humanity could spare. 3,000 combat vessels, ranging from massive carriers to small frigates. It was the entire strength of Earth's Navy, gathered in one place for one battle. "If we lose here, Earth falls," her second-in-command said quietly. "Then we don't lose," replied simply. She established her command post on the heavy battleship New Seoul. From there, she could coordinate the entire fleet. Doctor worked beside her, analyzing Council tactics and preparing counters. Captain Park commanded the vanguard, the ships that would meet the Council fleet first. Pilot O led the fighter wings that would harass the Council formation. They had 3 weeks to prepare, and they used every second. Mines were laid throughout the system, placed in patterns only human ships knew how to navigate safely. Hidden weapons platforms were installed on asteroids, camouflaged to look like worthless rock. Supply depots were established at strategic points. Every advantage they could find, they took. "It's still not enough," said one knight, staring at the tactical display. "Even with all our preparations, they outnumber us 300 to 1. The math just doesn't work." "Math didn't work at either," replied, "but held them for 6 hours and made them pay in blood. We don't need to win. We need to hurt them so badly they lose the will to continue." "That's a lot of faith in human stubbornness." Smiled grimly. "It's the one thing we have in unlimited supply." On New, Governor Sora had been holding out against the Council's siege for 8 months. The colonists had lost half their number, but they still fought. Every day, Council troops died in ambushes. Every night, human resistance fighters struck at their camps. The Council had sent more and more reinforcements, until nearly 10,000 enemy soldiers were stuck on one small world. Then relief came. Colonel Bay, promoted after her actions at Station, arrived with a fast attack fleet. She hit the Council ships in orbit while Sora's people struck from below. The Council forces, already demoralized and exhausted, broke. Those who could retreated, those who couldn't surrendered. Sora stood in the ruins of her colony's capital and looked at the damage. Buildings were destroyed. Streets were with weapons fire, but the flag of Earth still flew above the governor's mansion. "We held," her deputy said, tears streaming down his face. "We held," Sora agreed. "Now let's go help the others." The veterans of New, hardened by months of desperate fighting, joined the fleet heading to the threshold. They brought with them something precious, the knowledge that humans could stand against the Council and survive. The Council fleet arrived exactly when predicted. It emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, a wall of ships that stretched across the threshold system. 1 million warships, carrying the might of the oldest civilizations in the galaxy. They came with confidence, expecting this to be the decisive blow that would finally break humanity. Commander Han was there again, commanding a sector of the fleet. He had not forgotten station. He knew humans were dangerous, but even he didn't believe they could stand against what the Council had brought. "All ships advance formation," the fleet commander ordered. "Destroy any human vessels, secure the threshold, begin the invasion of Earth space." The Council fleet moved forward like an ocean tide, seemingly unstoppable. And then they met the humans. Captain Park's vanguard struck first. His 1,000 ships dove into the Council formation with suicidal aggression, firing everything they had. They ignored return fire, ignored damage, ignored the impossibility of what they were doing. They just attacked, pouring out decades of Earth's most advanced weapons. The Council fleet staggered. They had expected resistance, but not this. Not an assault so fierce it felt like rage given physical form. Ships punched through the forward lines, targeting command vessels and communication hubs. They moved in patterns that seemed random but were actually carefully calculated to maximize confusion. "They're insane," one Council captain reported. "They're flying like they don't care if they die." "They probably don't," Han replied grimly. He had learned this lesson at humans fought differently because they cared about different things. They didn't fight to win battles. They fought to protect everything behind them. The battle expanded as more forces engaged. Pilot O led her fighter squadrons in devastating strikes against Council carriers. She had flown against these ships for months now and knew their every weakness. Her pilots followed her through fire and death, each one determined to take as many enemies with them as possible. Admiral watched from the command center as the battle unfolded. The first engagement went well, but the Council was adapting. They were beginning to coordinate to focus their overwhelming numbers. The human vanguard was being pushed back, taking terrible losses. "Phase 2, she ordered, "spring the trap." Throughout the threshold system, the hidden weapons platforms activated. Minds that had been dormant suddenly armed themselves. The Council fleet, pushing forward confidently, suddenly found itself in a carefully prepared kill zone. Explosions rippled through the Council formation. Ships that had been advancing suddenly found themselves isolated, surrounded by human weapons. The neat formation began to break apart as captains tried to avoid the danger zones. But Doctor had planned even deeper than that. "Now," he said quietly. Human ships that had been pretending to retreat suddenly turned and attacked. Fresh squadrons emerged from hiding spots behind asteroids. Every move the Council made had been predicted, and humans had prepared counters for all of them. The battle raged for 3 weeks. It wasn't a single fight but hundreds of smaller engagements, each one desperate and brutal. The Council kept pushing forward, using their numbers to grind down the human defense. But the cost was staggering. Captain Park's ship was hit on the 5th day of fighting. His bridge was holed and half his crew was dead. But he kept fighting, kept giving orders, kept making the enemy pay. When his weapons were destroyed, he rammed his damaged ship into a Council cruiser, buying time for other human vessels to escape. He survived the collision barely. Rescue ships pulled him and his remaining crew from the wreckage. As medical teams worked on him, his last words before passing out were, "Did we slow them down?" "You stopped an entire battle group for 6 hours, Captain," the rescue commander told him. "You stopped them." Similar acts of sacrifice and courage happened across the battlefield. A damage control team stayed behind on their dying ship to keep the reactor running long enough for one final weapon salvo. A fighter pilot with a damaged ship flew directly into a Council flagship's engine, causing a chain reaction. A frigate captain used his last missiles to destroy an incoming strike group that would have killed thousands of human troops. The Council fleet kept coming, but they were bleeding. Every system they took cost them hundreds of ships. Every victory felt hollow because the price was so high. After 2 weeks, they had lost over 200,000 warships. They had advanced halfway through the threshold, but they still faced determined human resistance. Then Doctor unveiled humanity's final secret. For 5 years, Earth's scientists had been working on a weapon based on captured Council technology. They called it the Quantum Net, a network of quantum-linked minds that could be triggered simultaneously across vast distances. The Council didn't know about it because the technology should have been impossible for humans to create. But humanity had the benefit of desperation and genius working together. "Fire the net," Admiral ordered. Throughout the threshold system, thousands of specially designed minds activated at once. They created a cascading quantum reaction that jumped from ship to ship wherever Council vessels were clustered together. The Council's greatest advantage, their massive fleet formation, became their doom. In the span of 3 minutes, 400,000 Council ships were destroyed or crippled. Command structures collapsed. Communication networks went dead. The perfectly coordinated fleet became a panicked mob, ships fleeing in every direction to escape the quantum chain reaction. Commander Han watched his entire sector disappear in fire. He had started the battle commanding 12,000 ships. He ended it with less than 3,000. And he understood, finally, what humanity had been trying to teach the Council all along. "All ships retreat," he ordered. His voice was heavy with defeat. "Retreat to Council space. The threshold is lost." The Council fleet fled, leaving behind nearly 500,000 destroyed or abandoned ships. It was the worst military defeat in galactic history. The mighty Galactic Council, who had ruled for 10,000 years, had been broken by a species they had once thought primitive. Admiral stood on the bridge of the New Sol and watched the enemy retreat. Her fleet had been reduced by half. So many brave people were dead. Captain Park was in surgery. O had survived but lost most of her squadron. The victory had cost them everything. But they had won. Against impossible odds, they had held the line. "Send a message on all Council frequencies," she ordered. "Tell them this, leave our space. Don't come back. The threshold is ours. Earth is ours. Humanity will never surrender." The message went out across the galaxy, and everywhere it played, the same thought echoed. The Galactic Council had finally learned what it meant to fight humans, and they had learned far too late. 6 months after the Battle of the Threshold, the galaxy looked very different. The Galactic Council still existed, but its authority was broken. The organization that had ruled for 10,000 years was now struggling to survive. 23 species had withdrawn their membership. They gave various reasons, but everyone knew the truth. They no longer believed the Council could protect them. If the mighty Council could be defeated by humans, what other threats might they be vulnerable to? Trade networks that had existed were collapsing. Species that had relied on Council protection were now negotiating directly with Earth for security agreements. Young civilizations that had once feared Council punishment were now openly defying their edicts. The entire galactic order was unraveling. Ambassador stood in what had once been the Grand Council chamber. It was half empty now, with many seats abandoned. She looked older than she had a year ago, the weight of failure heavy on her shoulders. She had been one of the strongest voices for war against humanity. Now she had to face the consequences of that decision. "We must negotiate," a representative was saying. "We have no other choice. Our fleets are broken. Our authority is gone. If we don't make peace with humanity, we will become irrelevant." "We offered them peace before," another council member said bitterly. "They rejected it." "Because we offered them chains disguised as protection," said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "I led us into this disaster. I pushed for war. I believed humanity would submit like every other young species. I was wrong." The chamber fell silent. For a council ambassador to admit error was almost unheard of. "We didn't offer them peace," continued. "We offered them surrender. We demanded they stop growing, stop building, stop being what they are. We asked them to give up their freedom for our comfort, and when they refused, we tried to break them with force." She looked around the half-empty chamber. "Now we are broken instead. The question is not whether we need peace with humanity. The question is whether they will even talk to us." On Earth, President Lee was dealing with her own challenges. The war had cost them dearly. Over 1 million human soldiers were dead. Entire colonies had been destroyed. The economy was strained to breaking point. Earth had won, but the victory tasted of ashes and grief. She stood at the memorial wall in New Geneva, where the names of the fallen were inscribed in stone. So many names. Too many. She found the section for station and ran her fingers over the names of the 240 defenders who had died there. "They're asking for talks," her aide said quietly. "The council. They've sent 3 diplomatic requests this week." "And what do you think they want?" asked, not taking her eyes from the wall. "Peace, ma'am, real peace this time." Was quiet for a long moment. "Schedule a meeting, but not on their terms. If they want to talk to us, they come to Earth. As guests, not as our superiors." The council delegation arrived 2 weeks later. They came in 3 small ships, not the massive fleet they had sent before. Ambassador led them, but her proud bearing was gone, replaced by something that looked like humility. The negotiations were held in Geneva, in the same building where humanity had once signed peace treaties between their own nations. Now they would negotiate peace for the galaxy. Doctor led Earth's negotiation team. The thin scientist had become one of humanity's most important figures, the strategist who had helped them survive impossible odds. Across from him sat and a dozen other council representatives. "We come seeking peace," began. "You came seeking peace once before," replied calmly. "It was not peace you offered then." "No," admitted. "It was not. We sought to control you, to make you fit into our galaxy on our terms. We were wrong." "Wrong because you lost, or wrong because it was unjust?" The question hung in the air, Met's eyes. "Both. I have had 6 months to think about what we did. We treated you as children who needed discipline. We forgot that every species deserves the right to determine their own path. Your resistance taught us that lesson at a terrible cost." The negotiations continued for weeks. The council offered everything they had once demanded humanity give up: recognition as a sovereign power, full access to council trade networks and technology, permanent seats on all council committees, everything humanity had asked for originally and more. But there was one more request, and it was the hardest one. Presented it in a private meeting with an admiral. "The galaxy is not safe," said. "With the council weakened, other powers are moving. There are hostile civilizations at the galaxy's edge that we have held back for thousands of years. They are testing our borders now, sensing weakness. We need help rebuilding our fleets." Admiral's expression was cold. "You want us to help rebuild the military that tried to destroy us?" "I know how it sounds," said. "But if the council falls completely, the chaos will reach Earth eventually. Those hostile powers don't distinguish between council worlds and human worlds. They will come for everyone." President Lee considered this carefully. She met with her cabinet, with military leaders, with the governors of the colonies. The debate was fierce. Many wanted to let the council suffer for what they had done. Others saw the practical need for galactic stability. Captain Park, recovered from his injuries at the threshold, gave his opinion to the military council. We didn't fight to destroy the galaxy. We fought for the right to exist as equals. If we let hostile powers tear everything apart, then all those deaths were for nothing. Pilot O, who had lost so many friends and comrades, was asked for her view. "I hate the council for what they made us do," she said quietly. "But I don't want to see more suffering. If we can prevent that, we should." Governor Sara, whose colony had been devastated by the war, spoke from New. "My people suffered terribly, but we suffered defending our home, not out of hate. If peace can be real this time, if respect can be genuine, then we should try." In the end, President Lee made the decision. She called a full assembly of Earth's government and addressed them. "The council came to us once before and demanded we surrender our freedom," she began. "We rejected that demand and fought for the right to determine our own future. We won that fight at terrible cost. Now the council returns, and they ask not for our submission but for our help." She paused, looking at the faces of humanity's leaders. "Some will say we should let them fall. They tried to destroy us. They killed our people. They deserve whatever happens to them, and there is truth in that anger. But we are not the council. We did not fight this war to become like them. We fought to prove that respect must be earned, that dignity is not negotiable, and that peace must be between equals. If we help them now, we do so not as subjects or even as members of their organization. We do it as partners, as equals, because the galaxy needs stability and because we have the power to provide it." The assembly voted. It was close, but the decision was made. Earth would help rebuild the council fleet, but on human terms. In exchange, the entire galaxy would operate under a new framework, one based on equality rather than hierarchy. The new Galactic Accord was signed in Geneva 6 months later. Representatives from 800 civilizations attended, including many who had never been allowed in council chambers before. The old order was dead. Something new was being born. Admiral and ambassador stood together at the ceremony, two former enemies who had learned hard lessons from their conflict. "Do you think it will last?" asked, "this new peace?" "That depends," replied. "The old council tried to maintain peace through dominance. That could never last. This new accord is built on mutual respect. As long as we remember that, yes, it will last. And if we forget..." This expression was hard. "Then humanity will remind you, we proved we can fight. We would prefer not to have to prove it again." Nodded slowly. "That is a reminder we will not forget. Your species taught the galaxy a lesson that will echo for 10,000 years. Respect cannot be demanded, freedom cannot be bargained away, and peace without dignity is not peace at all." Doctor watched the ceremony from a balcony overlooking the assembly hall. Beside him stood Sung, Earth's intelligence director, who had coordinated much of humanity's intelligence operations during the war. "Do you think they've really learned?" asked quietly. Was quiet for a moment, watching the council representatives sign the accord. "Some have, others will need more time, but the important thing is that the galaxy has learned. Every young civilization watching this ceremony now knows that they don't have to accept injustice. They can fight for their rights. They can win." "That might cause more wars," observed. "Perhaps," agreed. "But they will be wars for freedom, not wars to maintain oppression. I'll take that any day." On the floor below, President Lee signed the Galactic Accord on behalf of humanity. Her signature represented more than just a peace treaty. It represented a new way of thinking about galactic civilization, not as a hierarchy with powerful species at the top and weak ones at the bottom, but as a community of equals, each with their own path to walk. As the ceremony ended and celebrations began, Captain Park found himself in a quiet corner with Colonel Bay, Governor Sara, and Pilot O. The four of them had become friends through the crucible of war. "We did it," said, joining them. The engineer-turned-soldier had been decorated for bravery during the Threshold campaign. "Peace, real peace." "At a hell of a price," said softly. They were all quiet, thinking of the friends and comrades who hadn't survived to see this day. The memorial wall in New Geneva now held over 1,000,000 names. Each name represented a life, a story, a future that would never be. "They would be proud," said finally. "Everyone who fought, everyone who died, they did it so humanity could stand free. We achieved that. This peace, difficult as it was to reach, proves they didn't die for nothing." "To the fallen," said, raising his glass. "To the fallen," the others echoed. Across Earth and its colonies, similar toasts were being made. Humanity had faced annihilation and had refused to yield. They had fought against impossible odds and had emerged victorious. More importantly, they had emerged with their principles intact. They had not become the thing they fought against. Years later, when historians studied this period, they would call it the Threshold War. They would analyze the tactics, the strategies, the weapons. But they would also note something more important. It was the war that changed how the galaxy thought about power and justice. The Galactic Council had believed their 10,000 years of rule gave them the right to dictate terms to younger species. Humanity had proven them wrong, not through conquest or domination, but by simply refusing to surrender their freedom and making that refusal stick. Ambassador, who lived another 40 years after the war, spent much of that time teaching younger council members about the mistakes that had led to disaster. Her most famous lecture was titled, "The Price of Arrogance." "We offered humanity peace talks," she would say. "But we did not offer them peace. We offered them chains, and when they rejected those chains, we tried to force them into submission. In doing so, we destroyed our own authority and taught the galaxy that might does not make right. That lesson cost us dearly, but it was a lesson we desperately needed to learn." The Galactic Council never regained its former power, but in time, it became something better, a forum for equals rather than an instrument of control. And at the center of this new galactic order stood humanity, not as conquerors, but as the species that had dared to say no and had paid the price to make that no stick. On Earth, in the Hall of Memory, a plaque was placed beside the memorial wall. It bore a simple inscription. "Here are remembered those who fought for humanity's freedom. They were offered peace and rejected it because what was offered was not peace but surrender. They chose to fight for dignity, for freedom, for the right to walk their own path among the stars. They won that fight at terrible cost. May we never forget the price of freedom or the courage required to defend it." President Lee, now elderly but still sharp, would sometimes stand before that plaque and remember. She remembered the day she rejected the Council's first offer. She remembered the fear and the determination. She remembered the cost. And she remembered thinking, as she watched the Council delegation leave that first time, "They will regret making us choose between freedom and safety." They had. The entire galaxy had witnessed that regret. And in that regret, something new had been born. A galaxy where respect was earned, where dignity was recognized, and where peace meant something more than submission. Humanity had rejected peace talks and sparked a war. But in doing so, they had forced the galaxy to face its own injustices and had built something better from the ashes. That was humanity's real victory. Not the battles won or the ships destroyed, but the idea they had defended, that every species, no matter how young or how small, deserved to be treated with dignity and respect. The Galactic Council had learned regret. The galaxy had learned justice. And humanity had proven that some things were worth fighting for, no matter the cost.